To all those above me that watch over me, to all of you, my fave parapeeps on this side of the veil, welcome. I'm Shawn Whittington. I'm a seminarian in the United States Old Catholic Church, and this is the Paranormal Ministry. And I'm coming to you live from my haunted house, my very haunted house. And Dreamcatcher's spinning a little bit right here. Not bad. It's been quiet today. Uh, and it usually is. Even on the other side of the veil, everybody wants to hear what my guest tonight has to say. It's like going to school with her. I enjoy these. If there's anything you want to know about my wife and I and our ministry work, go to our website, www.ghost-b-gone.biz. Anything you want to know about us is there. The school I teach, the class I teach, my books, anything you want to know about her and I is there. Tonight is a very special night. I only do 2 Mondays a month now. The second Monday of every month and the last Monday of every month. Second Monday of every month, you all know what it is. It is the Joy to the World series, and she comes back every month. So without further ado, let's bring on my very special guest. Please give a big, warm Paranormal Ministry family welcome to the one and only Dr. Joye PUGH.
Hi, Shawn.
How are you?
How's my favorite celebrity?
I haven't talked to him lately. I don't know. I'll ask him.
I'm fine, thank you.
There he is. He's doing fine. He's doing fine. I didn't want to speak for him, but he's doing fine.
No, the guy that plays you on the Legion of Exorcists, he does a great job. I mean, he really reminds me of you. It's amazing how they found a character that is so you. But that show is amazing to me.
I have an interesting story to tell you, but his name is Steve Crawford. And one night, this is years ago when I still had a radio show, and the person that ran the radio station said some guy named Steve Crawford keeps calling here wanting to talk to you. Says he's playing you in a TV show. And I hadn't, it was still mum's the word, and I hadn't told her yet. So now I had to tell her what was going on, and her head exploded that I kept that secret from her, and that's why I'm no longer on that network any longer. But he was already trying to reach out to me like a method actor to hear me, see my mannerisms, talk to me a little bit. But what happened was, here's this guy, blonde hair, brown eyes, blonde mustache, or he was clean shaven, I think, sees me, and how he got the role was he totally made himself up as me. He went and got a pre-shirt. He had his wife darken his hair, dark brown. He put on a fake beard, brown beard, and he threw in blue contacts, and he did this show. The audition tape he sent into the production company was this show. He came on just like me and did I don't know how long of a show he did. I don't even know if he had a guest, but he did me as me doing this show, and that got him the role. But it's amazing how a guy, who doesn't really, honestly, doesn't look anything like me until they make him up like me.
It's amazing. It's really
And
good.
I totally flowed with. I mean, my cast members used to joke with me that, oh, they're going to get Danny DeVito to play you or Jack Black.
Yeah.
But when I met
think this
Steve,
guy's good. I just
Yeah.
think he's really good playing you,
Really,
and his
really good.
expressions when he gets into it, the activities that you've gone through. I'm like amazed by it. It's just so he's very captivating. The way he looks, the way he responds to the demonic presence. I mean, it's just really good. It's really good.
I couldn't have asked for a nicer guy and a more talented actor to have been chosen to play me. I'm so happy for. Well, he had a lot of success before that show, but I congratulated him all the time on the success with Legion, and hopefully goes on to another season, and he's back, and we'll see. But yeah, he did a great job. I'm happy for him.
Yeah, he did good. But then, you're on there so it's not like you're not on there. You're actually on there too when you're sitting around the table and discussing everything. So you do a great job just interacting with everyone else about what has happened and and what was going on. I mean, he's playing the character line, but you all sitting around the table discussing this is to me quite amazing. I'm just very impressed by it. Just totally impressed by it.
You know what you would have loved had you been there? You would have loved the church that we filmed in. A lot of people think we were on a set, and when I tell them no, we were actually in a 200-year-old Catholic church set up in the hills above Old Pasadena, and it was
Wow.
just it was like stepping back in time going in this church. And when we didn't know where we were going. When all our assistants came and picked us up at the hotel and were taking us out the first day of shooting, we thought we were going to a studio. And as we're getting closer to this, and we're like, well, this studio sure certainly can't be up here. And when we came around a corner, and you're going up this little
Oh, wow.
winding road, and you can see this church that looks like a little castle up on this hill.
Wow.
It was pretty amazing. We're like, she said, well, that's where you guys are filming, and we were no, not a word was spoken in the car. Everybody was just like,
Wow.
and
Wow.
uh, and when I got out, there's a beautiful picture of an angel with a cross, carrying like Jesus's cross on her shoulder, and it's like way taller than me, and it's just right out in the front of the church in this little courtyard. And I stopped and made somebody come over and take a picture of me right next to that angel before we even went in, because I'd never seen a
Wow.
statue like that before. But they had a mausoleum there into the hillside, like it was dug into the hillside,
Wow.
with big iron gates and a big rock thing over the top of it, saying whatever it said, mausoleum. But they had an old mausoleum there, and it was just when you walked into this church, I mean, you just knew that there was a lot of history and a lot of stuff
Right.
had gone on in this church over over many 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 years, and they couldn't have picked a better spot to do that round table stuff they did with us. And
It's
I
just fascinating the way the round table is. I agree with you. The decor, everything just goes right along with what you're doing. I mean, they could have made a better set. Absolutely, not a better.
yeah I and I didn't know any of that. Originally when they reached out to me, they reached out to me before the pandemic. And my
Wow.
first impression was to say no. I said, you can't really do a really good show about demonic possession and exorcism. You just can't do it. And I wasn't interested. But after several conversations with that first guy, and then he kept bumping me up the chain of command ladder, and I would talk to the next guy. When I started talking to the show creators, uh, that's when they started selling me on it, their ideas, and they still kept a lot from us. But I had never heard anything like that before. Real exorcists around a round table in a church. Well, I thought it was a set, but they said it was a church type setting.
Hmm.
And you guys will tell your stories. And as you tell your stories about real cases, we will do cinematic recreations.
Yeah.
And I just thought, that sounds pretty darn cool. And the cast was great. I loved everybody that they picked as other. I'd never met any of those people, all colleagues in my field. Never met
But
any of
they
them.
all are impressive. They are
Very
very
much so.
impressive.
Very much so.
I just feel closer to you because I feel like I know you, and it's amazing.
Well, you already do.
It's amazing to know what you've done, and then to see it enacted like that. It is fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. I think it's because of the years of research of what I've done, and you try to explain it to somebody, but it's not like seeing it,
You
on the
talked to me. You
TV.
asked me. I don't know if you were. You might have just been a matter of factly saying that, but you said something like, I would do what you guys do.
Yeah.
You would be with your get up and gumption, your get up and go gumption type of person you are. Meet things head on. You're just one of the bravest women I know. You would be great at it. And I would just, if you were serious about that, I get asked that question a lot. And after I let you just run with whatever topics you want to run with tonight and talk to us about, if you want to address that, I can address that for you and for all the people that reach out to me all the time saying, I want to do that. And we can talk a little bit about what's all involved in that. But I know you had mentioned things like tonight you wanted to talk about DNA. I made a note here somewhere. Why somebody sent me something about the after your last appearance a month ago, someone
Yes.
sent me the top 3 pineal gland boosting tips,
Mm-hmm.
little steps to take to boost it.
Ooh.
So
I have to.
I've got that handy. But here's the note. You wanted to talk about DNA, vibration, biodata, and then demonic attachments. How Satan gets his demons to attach to us. So, like I said, I call you my co-host on this night, but basically it's your show on the second Monday of every month. You can pick whatever topic you want to talk about and just go at it.
Well, I am very interested in all of this because I'm really not too afraid of the things that go bump in the night. And maybe it's because of the research that I've done for so long. You get an idea of what you're really dealing with. And it is a very serious thing. And it's not something to play with. My best friend always laughs and says, if a UFO were to land outside my house, I would be out with my little things knocking on it and trying to
Yeah.
see about it.
Yeah.
I'm kind of that kind of person.
You're the kind of person that when people come to visit you, you always have food or snacks or something.
Well, I don't know. I'm not really a good cook, so I wouldn't say that I'm that way, but I'm very inquisitive. I've
Yeah.
always been like, how does this work, or what makes this tick, or anything that's unusual and different that most people would not really be interested in or be a little afraid of it. Like I said, understanding about the unidentified flying object situation and how I really came to know about it when I was of age of 8 years old, having seen the first one. And so, throughout my life, when people would laugh and say, "Oh, that's conspiracy, it's not real," those kinds of things, I had already seen something at 8, and I knew that what I saw was really what I saw. So I wasn't trying to fool
Which book
anybody.
is that?
That's actually written up in my book, Parables of Joy on a Georgia
Okay.
Farm.
Okay.
It's true stories about my life, and that particular incident is a story in that book because I think that these kind of things that happened to me when I had this strange dream at age 6 that I really believed I saw the end of days, saw what Jesus looked like. It put me on this path that I am on now, and then I think then opportunities that presented themselves, like seeing a UFO at age 8 and really seeing how my father reacted to it and not really being able to really explain it. And those were back in the days when there was nothing flying around in the sky at night. Um, I grew up on a little South Georgia farm. You didn't see any lights in the sky other than the moon and the stars. And so even if you went to Atlanta, which is now one of the biggest hubs, for aircraft. My dad took me up there when I was really, like 6 or 7 years old, and there was one building, and there was an airstrip, and you actually went outside and walked up the stairs to the top, which allowed you to stand out there while the planes would come in. It maybe it'd take an hour before a plane would land, and you get to see a plane land. But he was a crop duster. And so they crop dusted their fields. And interesting enough, they would land the planes out on the chip and seal highways in front of the house. I mean,
That's
let me
cool.
just say.
That's
So
very
there was
cool.
not a lot of stuff, what I'm trying to say, in the sky at night. And so my dad being a pilot himself and seeing this, we were actually riding a motorcycle up one night because I love to ride motorcycles, and he had a motorcycle. And so every night when he got through with the farm, I would beg him to go for a ride. And so we were headed up to the crossroads when this big white thing goes right by us, just right over the treetops. I mean, huge, not blinking, not a tail behind it, not like a meteorite, anything like that. It wasn't falling. It was just staying straight on. And he slammed on brakes at and I was, of
Wow.
course, I was holding on to him, and I saw it at the same time he did. And immediately he cut the engine, and we both were like, "Can you believe what we're seeing?" And there was absolutely no sound. And so after we watched it go, 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 go forever and ever and ever, it never did dip, it never did fall, it had no sparks, it was just huge white thing. So anyway, he turned around and he said, he always called me girl. He said, "Girl, did you see that?" And I said, "Yes, Daddy, what was it?" And he said, "You saw it. You saw it, right?" And I was like, "Yes." And he asked me, he said, "What did you see?" And of course I told him what I saw. And he sat there for the longest and turned back around. We kept staring, toward the north. And it was, of course, it was a beautiful, clear night. And of course, nothing else, no other sounds out in the middle of nowhere. There was no sounds. And we sat there for a while, and then he turned around. Instead of going on to do the bike ride, we went back to the house. And I'll never forget, we got off under the shelter, and he looked at me again. He said, "You saw that, right?" And I said, "Yes, sir." I said, "What was it?" He says, "I don't know. I really don't know." And I could see the bewilderment in his face.
Yeah, and he's a pilot.
And he's a pilot.
Yeah.
So as we go into the house, my mother was standing there. My grandfather and my grandmother lived in a big farmhouse with my little sister and I and Dad. And she looked at me and she said, "Well, that was a short ride," because she knew that I usually would like to ride for 2 hours. As long as he would ride, I would be on the back of that motorcycle. So what are
How
you
long
doing?
were you gone for?
Only for about 15, 20 minutes. We had just gotten up the highway, so this was really weird.
Mom knew something had happened.
Something. And so she could kind of look at our faces and kind of figure there's something weird about this. And so she said, "What are y'all doing back so quick?" And Daddy says, "You're just not going to believe what Joy and I just saw." And of course, everybody by that time had come into the room and they were looking at us, and had this kind of weird look on our faces. And so, of course, they started asking, "What did you see?" And we began describing it, and then we describe it again, and they'd ask us, when something like that is like over and over. And there was just not an explanation, because it was not a meteorite. It was not something falling out of the sky. It was not something exploding. It did not have sound. It was bright, and the light was so perfect. It wasn't like it was yellowed. It was more of a blue, crisp, very blue light. And so anyway, the next day, Dad comes in, and I'll never forget, I was sitting, in the house there, and he comes in and he's got a newspaper, and I would give anything if I still had that newspaper. He throws it down on the table. He says, "I think this is what we saw." And it was headlines that there were UFOs seen all along the eastern coast. And it was a pretty big newspaper. And of course, I know it wasn't our local newspaper because it was thin, and it was something that only came out during like once a week. So I don't know whether it was a newspaper. Sometimes in our area, we would get the Atlanta Constitution and Journal, or we would get sometimes the Florida Times, which was out of Jacksonville. But I don't have any idea if it was that, or if he'd come across something, had found a newspaper somewhere that had that on it. But I just never forget thinking to myself, "Oh, a UFO. What is a UFO?" And of course, we began talking about it. And then Dad began explaining, that there was things that were being seen in the sky, and it was kind of unusual. And he was a history buff. He knew he was into all this, the Civil War, all the world wars, Hitler. He knew about everything. Anyway, he was just amazing at his knowledge of history. And so he began telling me some things that he had read about and this kind of thing. And so immediately I was just sold, because, it's like I had perfect vision. I had good hearing, good eyesight, and literally saw that with my own eyes. And so it set me on this course that pay attention to the night sky. And that's something I have done, because immediately he went out and bought a telescope that I still have.
Oh, cool.
That I would go out in the night, and I would, focus on the stars and try to see different things. And he would try to talk with me about and try to teach me about all that kind of thing. But, we just didn't see anything like that. And I would watch the skies. And like I say, I had the telescope, loved doing that every night. I still do that. I still sit out at night. I watch the stars. I've seen a lot of UFOs, and I've seen a lot that really meet all the specifications that the military is now releasing, that I've seen with my own eyes. And so I began, I guess in 1991, I had a really, really strange situation that lasted for a good number of maybe 2.5, 3 hours, and which I saw the ones that looked like I call it, because I used to shoot pool, like a billiard pool rack that has a bumper edge going around it. It's not the perfect triangle. It's rounded, like you would set up to play pool or billiards. Yeah. And I was really watched this. Called one of the military bases. They didn't have anything up. They didn't have anything on radar. Called the local airport. They had seen it right before they closed in the sky. And so I knew I'm like, there is no way that this is something that if our military can do this, in other words, we don't have anything to worry about because we're going to own the world. Okay,
Yeah.
it had that kind of capability. But the one thing that was most interesting about it, and of course, my husband at the time that has now passed, he was going to a business meeting. And many times he would ask me if I wanted to ride around to the other side of the lake and stay with my mother and grandmother and eat with them while he went to do a business meeting in town. And so that night, that's what I had planned to do. And got in the car with him. And as we were going out, I looked to the west, and there was this thing sitting there that had light in it that made it look kind of like a burnish, orangey, steel looking, just sitting there, not moving. And I said to him, I said, Neil, that's really weird. Look at that thing in the sky right there. And he said, yeah, it is. And of course, he had to get to his business meeting. And so I climbed over the seat to get in the back seat. So we were turning to go another direction so that I could keep my eye on it. Well, lo and behold, thank goodness I did. Because what happened was this thing was sitting there by itself. And all of a sudden, this arch of light, let me turn this way, came out of it like a circular arch of light. And it was rounded. And it went out like this from the original, and then it went back in an arch, perfectly white, circular like a rainbow. It went out again, and it came back, and it went out again, and it came back. And when it came back, it stayed there for a second, and then it went like this, and then all of a sudden, at the arch, there was another one. That manifested right in front of my face. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's two of them now. It birthed another one from whatever this light was. And it did it the 3 times. And then the third time, boom, there's 2 of them. And they looked circular at the moment where they were at, just sitting over there in the western sky. And then all of a sudden they take off, and it's just like they're just flying around. I mean, just all over the sky. Well, he's trying to drive the car, and I'm going bananas in the back seat, hanging on to the windows, making sure I don't lose this. And so they're flying around the sky, all over the sky, just carrying on. It was just absolutely amazing to watch. And so when I got to my mother's home, she also lived on the lake, and their house faced that same direction. Well, I jumped out of the car, ran through the house screaming, get me a pair of binoculars, get me a phone. And the phones were those that were in the cradles, they were not cell phones, but you could take them outside. I went running through her house, just screaming that. And of course, they were like, what in the world? So when I get out on the back deck, I've got a perfect view, nothing distracting me whatsoever. Mother comes out with the phone, she comes out with the binoculars, and I'm watching it, just watching it. It's unreal, just flying around. And it's almost like they got into a chasing mode. And then the coolest thing, they would come over the lake. And as they would come over the lake, they would slow down to almost, they were hardly moving. I mean, they were like so slow, it was like a floating balloon.
Wow.
And as they got closer, instead of being so rounded like a circular thing, that's when they were close enough for me to look up at them with the binoculars and see that it looked like a billiard rack. And they go across the water up above, and then they would circle back around and go really fast, way out. And you could see them go way out. And then they would come back at the end of the lake, and they would come back and do that again. Well, what would happen after they would get that real slow, then there was like 6 little triangle looking things that came out of the east. And they were banked like one behind the other like this. But they were perfectly isosceles triangles. So when these these ones that look like the billiard rack, the 2 would come over, then these other ones, they got almost behind them and then they went dispersed. And you could see them, one sitting over here and one sitting way over there and one sitting back there. So they made a circle, but at a great distance, you could still see that they were lit. And then as those other ones came through the lake again, one would come and get behind them. And when they would get behind them, if you've ever seen sparklers like at 4th of July,
Yeah.
doing this number, when they would get behind them, that's the first one, the back of it would start doing this sparkle, almost like it was giving it some kind of energy. And you can see it was like sparkles. Okay. And then once they stay behind it, then they would take off and be gone. And they would sit over there and you see them. Every one of those ones that look like the isosceles triangles went behind that is each pass. There would be another one come and another pass. It's almost like they were getting some kind of energy from the water itself. I couldn't feel anything. It was very cold. There was nobody outside. It was just as quiet on the lake as it could be. And back in those days, there was not too many people that lived out here where I live. But anyway, the sun had gone down. I had the telephone. I called the military base not too far from me. I called the airport. They had seen this stuff over there. They couldn't figure out what it was. And so anyway, nobody could tell me anything other than I was just didn't want to, quit watching it. And like I say, when they all got their chance to be behind these two things and get whatever that was, like sparkles behind it, then those things, all of a sudden, they were sitting there in all these little points. And you could still see light out there. Nothing blinking, nothing like a plane, with the port, side and the starboard side or the lights with the red and greens. Nothing like that. All of them had like a light. And it was a pure looking light on each one of them. Well, when they all got behind there and got whatever they had to have, and they were sitting out in the points of lights like that, all of a sudden, when the last one went to its destination, then they all went, you saw them, and then they were gone. The other two came back one more time around the lake, and this time they got right up over me. And I've got my binoculars, so I'm telling you, I'm not too scared because I'm going to tell you, I've never seen anything quite like this. There is no way that a human person could have been in those craft because of the G-forces that I saw those things do and what they did. And the ability to go at these extreme fast. I mean, I've been to military bases. I've seen aircraft. My husband that passed away worked with TRW. So I saw some of the most fascinating, the first things that were ever, you couldn't pick them on radar. I mean, I saw some of those things before they ever actually released to the public to see. So it wasn't like I wasn't familiar with what, these kind of craft that we have can do, but this far exceeded anything that we could have done or been inside of. But so I'm like looking up at them and they're going across me like this. And you could barely hear, and I would say it sounded like a little bit of a hum, like a bee, like funny noise. And it was barely faint. And of course, I could barely hear it. And I don't know whether it was a vibration that I was just feeling on me by being directly under those things. But they actually turned and went back to the direction of where the first isosceles triangles that were in the formation came from. And I watched them until they were absolutely gone. So, I mean, this went on for about 2.5 hours. So I saw them in the daylight, which turned into the nighttime. And literally, I was about to freeze to death. But you think I would take my eyes off of those?
Let me ask you a question here, and I'm anxious to see what your answer is going to be. I talk to a lot of ufology people, and I think I've seen unidentified flying objects before. Don't know if they were extraterrestrial. Don't know, but I've seen some odd things. Oh, yeah, I lived in Vegas for a long time. You see odd things in the sky. So I've had ufology people tell me that if you see a UFO and it's extraterrestrial in nature, in origin, you've been on one. So
Well, then I've seen a
it's,
bunch, so
yeah,
apparently I've
that
been on
makes
a
you
bunch.
think of something. And then the reason why I asked you how long you'd been gone with your father on the motorcycle was
Yeah,
because if you had,
missing time.
yeah, if you'd came back and said, guess what we saw, and they said, where have you two been? You guys normally go hour, an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Right.
You've been gone 6 hours. Where have you two been? Um, if that was the case, then so when I throw something like that at you, I mean, have you ever, not to get too personal here, but have you ever you yourself really given your body a good once over, or had a significant other really give you a good once over to see if
Have
there's
any
ever
marks?
anything
Yeah.
like that, or have you had any of these reoccurring, like a lot of abductees? um, One abductee I talked to in Canada told me when he was first abducted, they didn't do anything to him. It was just a Q&A session, and
Right.
these extraterrestrials asked him, "Have you seen God yet?" Which
Yes.
I found very interesting. But um, you, how do you know? I mean, a lot of these abductees get these recurring dreams, which eventually turn into these recurring visits. And at first they think, it's ghosts, then angels, then demonic. But then the more I talk to them, I realize, no, I think they're describing more of a interdimensional visitation from some type of, not angelic being, but some type of intelligent entities that aren't of any of the previous mentioned group. Um, when I say that to you, they say if you've seen one, you've been on one. What do you think? And have you had any of the stuff happen to you that makes you think that maybe I don't know. What do you think?
Well, the thing about doing the research that I've done on this for so many years, because I had such an interest in it after what happened with Dad and I. And of course, I joined MUFON really quick after I saw the one that I just told you about, so that I could get a case study and talk to Walt Andrus, who was very much over that for years and years and years, when really MUFON was a small kind of organization. And there was a guy named Chris Early that was over the Georgia MUFON at the time, and he drove down from Atlanta, and he was a physicist, and we spent a lot of time talking about what I'd seen. But there was nothing like that. I never felt like that I had any kind of missing time. I was keeping up with the time. I could kill them. I documented everything, and every case that I've ever had, and I've had a bunch of cases having seen these things, making sure that I'm looking at the time. What time is it? What I'm documenting. Many times, if I'm seeing something that was most unusual at the time, I got to be pretty good friends with the guy that was over the Georgia MUFON, and I would just get him on the phone. I would just go ahead and start calling him while I was seeing it, and then start describing it. And then I know Peter Davenport, who was over the UFO kind of thing that he did at one time, and I don't know if Peter's still doing that, but he was out in Washington State, and he got a call from my area about something that this man was describing at 3 o'clock in the morning. And he called me at 3 o'clock in the morning. He goes, "Joye, I'm so sorry. I know it's 3 o'clock in the morning." He says, "But I've got a guy down in your area that's saying he's seeing this, this, and this, and this. And I'm wondering, is there any way that you could go outside and see if you see the same thing?" And so, of course, I get up from bed and run upstairs, and I have a balcony that's kind of set off to that area where he was talking about, and that's where my telescopes and all that were located, up in that room, for me to do observation and things at night, especially if I'm going to be watching meteor showers and whatever. And so I went up there, and sure enough, I could see exactly what he was describing. And he says, "Well, I'm going to put the guy on the phone with you." And I, of course, said that would be fine. And began discussing with him what was going on. Well, lo and behold, as many times people have called me and have unfortunately bad news, what he was seeing was the constellation Orion coming up, and he was seeing
Oh,
the three belt stars, and it kind of has a triangular look.
hmm.
And as it rotated on the horizon, but I was up till 5:30 with the man, because he was really, I mean, it was had really sent him in kind of an orbit of being afraid. But like I said, there's some things that you can identify, and then there's some things that just don't add up. But I've never, had an abduction experience or what I would say missing time experience when I've ever seen anything like this. I always approach it from a scientific, observation. And that was one reason I wanted to get involved with MUFON and became a consultant with them for years and years and years. And even, like I say, when Peter Davenport had his UFO center, they did a bunch of stuff in the past. They knew to call me if they were, if something happened. That was before they had investigative people and that kind of thing for this MUFON like they do now, field investigators. But it has been an interest, and it's something that, like I say, my best friend says if it comes over Joy's house, she's going to be right out there. If it lands, I'm going to be out there knocking on it. I just
You still
have
live in
this.
that same house?
Yes, I do. Yes, I
Really?
do.
Do you still have all that stuff in that one room?
Oh yes, oh yes, yes, yes.
Well,
So
how often do you do, like, I'm just going to call it a Joy's night watch? How often do you
uh,
do that? And
I usually do those pretty regular, and let me say that if I can stay outside at night, I love the outdoors. I love the lake. I have a little pontoon boat that I love to go out in and just watch the night sky. And it's amazing what you can see, especially right now, which I am really concerned because I guess for the last 8, 9 years, when my best friend would come over, she and I would sit out there, especially when Mel was really sick. And I really needed a break because of being his constant caregiver, because he had a tracheotomy and things of that nature. But the weird thing is that we started seeing these lights that would come into the atmosphere, and they would look like they would drop down, and then they would manifest. And then they're really tiny, and they do not have any red or green. They do not blink. They have little tiny white lights on them. They're like solid white. And they do what we called them, like bugs on the lake. We have these little squiggly bugs that go across the lake like this. They're little tiny bugs, and they kind of squiggle across. We call them squigglies. Is what we call them. And so we started naming those things that we were seeing in the sky squigglies, because they're not flying. In other words, it cannot be a satellite. And I've seen satellites cross, and I've seen the space station. I've seen the Starlink, satellites that Elon Musk is putting up. I've seen all of this with telescopes with the naked eye. I've seen it all. And so I don't want to identify that it is any of that, because it's not. It's high, and they will do this little when it moves, it zigzags across the sky. And when you first see it, they'll come from any direction. It will not necessarily always come from the west or the east or anything. Many of them look like they drop into the atmosphere, and then they'll go for so long in this little squiggly way, and then all of a sudden, they're just gone. And you'll just keep watching and watching, and they're gone. And the best way to catch them, if you ever want to do this at night, go out on a clear night, a lot of stars, and if you can get away from moonlight, it's better. And just instead of focusing on a spot in the sky, like looking at a star, just gaze and just keep gazing. Don't move your eyes, just gaze. And you will pick up these things moving. That's how you'll pick them up, because it's hard to kind of, if you're looking around and doing that, it's hard to pick up on them. But if you just stare at the sky, you'll see these little things start moving, and you'll see what I'm talking about. And there are a lot of them. There is not a night unless it's cloudy or raining that I don't see these things in the sky, and they're getting to be more of them. So it's quite interesting to me that we've got a UAP group now, the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena, that has been put together for the Pentagon and our country. And we've got a whistleblower that's now specifically saying that these entities are here with us. They are not human, and that they are flying these aircraft that our military has totally got pictures of. And I'm going to tell you that some of the things that I've seen the military has released, I've seen those same things over the years. So, where people used to laugh at me, they go, "Joy, do you believe in that?" And I'm like, look, I am a Christian. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I don't use drugs. I've got 20/20 vision. I saw these things when I was 8 years old. I've been seeing them since I was 8 years old by watching the sky. There is something out there. And of course, people would laugh and make fun of what I would say, but I had a complete knowledge that there was something there that was not adding up. And so I just continued to do the research, keep up with what I was seeing, document it, do a scientific analysis of it, write it up. And a lot of the things that I've seen are case studies at MUFON. So I'm coming at it from a whole different standpoint of, I wasn't interested in getting on CNN and telling whatever else about it. And most of the people who knew that I did this research, they would come to me and share with me what they had happened to them. And that's how I got into knowing about abductions, because I had several case studies where people did have these entities come into their bedrooms. They did deal with them. And it was interesting that it seemed like it followed them being involved in something satanic. I might have mentioned this on one of your shows before, that this one, he was literally staying in his vehicle outside because he was too scared to go to sleep in his house because these entities were coming in there. So he was literally locking himself in his vehicle at night, just panic beyond words. I mean, we're talking a good-looking guy, built up, not a person, literally having post-traumatic stress disorder because of these entities. And so when I started doing work with him, it became evident to me after asking many, many questions, he was involved with pornography. And he had not really shared that with anyone as to what was going on. And so I told him, I said, I feel like these entities are coming because they're evil. And, he would just describe that, what they look like and how they would be. And, you just knew that he didn't have a mental disorder. He was not doing it to try to get, CNN to come in and do a big story on him. He just really wanted me to help him. He was like, please just help me, and he knew that I was a Christian and that I really was going to do whatever I could do to try to help him in any way possible if there was a way to do this. So I told him, I said, you need to stop doing the pornography. You need to fervently pray to Jesus, for forgiveness. And when these entities come back, I want you to say to them, in the name of Jesus, I command that you go. And so sure enough, they showed back up. He did that. And in the middle of this abduction that had been continuing to happen, it stopped. The moment he brought up the name of Jesus, it totally stopped. And so he called me and he said, you're not going to believe what happened. And he began telling me what had occurred. So I said, okay, I just think that it's demonic. It's a demonic presence, and it's manifesting from a spiritual realm into a physical realm, which they can clearly do because angels can do that. I mean, we know that from Lot, being visited by angels. We know that by Abraham being visited by angels. I mean, clearly Mary was visited by an angel. So they can manifest into the physical realm and look human or look any way they want to be. But anyway, a couple of months went by and he called me, still no problem, his problem. And so a couple more months went by and all of a sudden I get a phone call one night and the guys panic again. They showed back up and he's back out in his vehicle, locked in his vehicle. And
they never came out to his car?
They would be at the windows, but they would not get into the vehicle. And I don't understand what kept them, because we're in the house. But in the vehicle, he felt like they couldn't get into the vehicle. And that was weird, unless it was the fact that there was a vibration of the vehicle and the engine running. I couldn't really understand what was keeping them out of the vehicle. But anyway, come to find out, after many questions, I finally, kept asking, what are you doing again that could be drawing them to you? Well, sure enough, he had started back looking at pornography. And I said, I'm going to tell you that scripture tells you once you clean that house out from this demonic entity, if you don't keep it swept clean and put Jesus in your mind and Jesus in your life, then those entities will come back and they'll bring 7 with them. Yeah. And I said, then it gets worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And then you're going to have a major problem. Well, sure enough, he did what I said. And to this day, stayed clean from that, has never had that happen again, got married, perfectly happy, everything's fine. So, I know that there are these entities and that this UFO phenomena is very real. Like I say, I'm not trying to fool myself. I have always wanted to know the truth about it. I know it's no different than you wanting to know the truth about the demonic things that you see and what you do. You're not trying to fool yourself. You're trying to understand exactly what's going on and how to deal with it and how to deal with it effectively and not let it overtake your ability to function, which many people, when they become demonically possessed, I mean, their function and their capabilities become a serious issue for them and anybody that's around them. But in the UFO phenomena, it seems to me that there's a correlation between that, because I found it interesting that using the name of Jesus stopped the problem. It stopped the abduction in its process. And at the time I was doing this, I had no knowledge that anybody else was even attempting to use the name of Jesus because of what was going on. But I just felt like it was an entity that's spiritual and that it can go in through, dimensions and that kind of stuff. And the only thing that I know that God created that could do that, are angels, are demonic beings that, come from the fallen angels. But anyway, there was a Presbyterian minister, Dr. Barry Dowling, that was doing the same type of work. And interesting enough, in one of my MUFON journals that I was getting monthly, he posted about his work and how he was using the name of Jesus and had tried other names like Buddha, Vishnu, Confucius, and none of the other names had worked with his abductees. So I had the opportunity to have a couple more abductees, so I used that same process. I want you to just say another name other than Jesus and see if the entity will leave, and it never did. So only with the name of Jesus did the entity really leave them alone. But it's a phenomenon that's very very strange. And like I say, I've taken a lot of slack over the years being a Christian.
Yeah.
Talking about something in the paranormal, and I don't understand it because I've always said the Bible is the most paranormal book that's ever been written, and it's 100% effectively true, and you can't take bits and pieces out of it because it's very real. So having it's like you with seeing demonic possession. There's a lot of people, unfortunately, that are in churches that don't believe in demonic possession. And, when I try to explain, look,
A lot of
you can,
clergy teaches against that.
they
I
do.
don't
And
I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense.
I'm like, if this person that was in the graveyard that Jesus came up to, that was in that traumatization of what they were dealing with, and he cast 2,000 of these devils out of this one person, I'm like, oh my gosh, if that's the case, and they call themselves Legion, and I mean, you got to go, either you believe in Jesus or you don't believe in Jesus, and you got to believe that what the Bible says is true. And even in Mary Magdalene, it says she had 7. I mean, we're told that even when Jesus cast them out, those demons said, hey, have you come before the time? They knew Jesus when his own chosen people didn't even know Jesus. So it's amazing to me that, unfortunately, the churches, I hate to say this, we're in the end of days, and these things that are manifesting in the sky are real. We've got a person that is saying on national television in front of our congressmen that we've got these things, they're manifesting, they're getting greater. They're not our adversaries. They are not our allies. We don't know what they are. And you've got a whistleblower that's saying they're not human. They are not of our kind of our world. It's something totally different, that the craft that they're using, that we have gotten them, we have them, other countries have them, they try to backward engineer them, which things are all these things that I've heard since I started doing the research on it. This conspiracy. Well, I hate to say now, it's not conspiracy. This stuff is very, very, very real. And unfortunately, our churches, the people sitting in the pews that should know the most about demons and fallen angels and the end of days and how these things are going to manifest, are sitting there going, oh, well, I just don't believe that you can be demonically possessed, and I don't believe in demons, and I don't believe in UFOs. And I'm like, what is fixing to manifest in this world is going to be like so bad. And if you don't have that total understanding about what you're dealing with and the truth behind it, Shawn, these people are going to be so caught off guard. And
Yeah.
that's exactly what Satan wants. He wants them to panic. The moment they panic, they get into mass mentality. That's this crazy, mob mentality, like a pack of dogs. One dog won't do something bad, but you get them all in a pack together and they do something stupid. That's the same thing that Satan is wanting to corral humanity under a crisis that's so out there that they all panic and they run down and get the mark of the beast. And that's one reason why my book, Be Smart, talks about all of this that we've been talking about tonight, because it is real. It is not fake. It is not conspiracy. And it's going to happen, and it's happening fast. Because to me, if we've got a whistleblower that was working with our government that's saying all the top people, when they get this Congress thing together to talk with him and get the people to talk about all of this, what people don't understand is NASA has already hired a priest for astrobiology to tell us there is something else out there against us. And when this all happens, it's going to make it look like, well, the creation story is not correct. I mean, you've already got artificial intelligence right now out there that they're using to try to rewrite the Bible. I mean, this is true stuff. This is not conspiracy. And I'm afraid if people don't get a hold of this, what's going on, and get it out of their mind about the paranormal stuff. The paranormal is real. The spiritual world is real. And if you're sitting in these pews and you've got pastors that are not dealing with this, you need to start looking into it so that when it all comes and hits us, that you're not one of those crazy people who doesn't remember. Scripture tells you, do not take the mark of the beast, because when you do, it's going to send you straight into the gates of hell, because it's going to make you a transhuman. They're going to connect you to artificial intelligence. They're going to change your humanism. And once you do that, you're no longer connected to God at all. So there is something, I know that this has kind of been a roundabout thing, but maybe it was good for me to be able to share what I've seen with my own eyes, what I know to be true. And really, it's been going on for a long time. I'm 66 years old. That's almost 60 something years ago that I had the first encounter at 8 years of age. So it's not something that I haven't been looking into. I've been looking into it since I was 8 years old. So I feel like that when you look at it from a scientific standpoint, and then you take and you look at what it says in Scripture, that science is catching up to what Bible verses have already told us about the end of days. There's going to be these beings manifesting, and unfortunately, they're going to have things about them that they can traumatize the human body, because it says that whoever takes that mark, that these things that come out of the abyss are going to sting you to the point that you can't deal with it. Well, the problem is, once you become that transhuman, you can't die.
Right.
And that inability to die, I mean, it's like we've always said, God gave death for people who get cancer and they are screaming at the top of their lungs. It gets them out of that pain. But there's coming a day that when you get that mark, you're not going to die. And these things are going to torture you. And Scripture is very straightforward about it. It doesn't like halfway tell you it's not real. It tells you it is very real, that you'll want to die and you cannot die. So there's some bad stuff coming, Shawn, and I'm glad that maybe talking about this, I know this kind of went in a little bit different direction, but I think it still ties back to what I was trying to say. That this is demonic stuff is real. I think the show that you're on right now is so important. I think people need to be paying attention to this demonic activity. It's increasing the numbers of narcissistic personality disorder that is very, very, very strange, because like even the best counselors say, like Dr. Phil, run if you encounter it, because we don't have a mental health protocol to deal with these types of entities that seem to be manifesting in people. And it's getting worse. So your UFO phenomenon is getting worse. Our government's saying there's somebody whistleblowing that these things are out there. They're real. They're not human. And then we know the demonic issues that you're dealing with. I'm sure you're seeing an increase in that because I know that Catholic Church, what was it, 2-3 years ago, hired 215 more priests to do nothing but deal with exorcisms because they're having so many people with issues. And the mental health profession is at a loss.
Yeah.
They all they know to do is tell you, if you encounter this person, run. Don't be around them. Don't try to deal with it because it's going to tear you down. And I know from personal experience, I've dealt with that. And it is not in the mental health protocol on how to fix that problem. Nothing. No medicine, no counseling. So it's got to be demonic.
I love you.
I love you too. You're doing a great job. I love the show.
I'll see you
And
next month.
I think it's just what we need to hear and see right now.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting me talk about this tonight. I mean, I hope it's
I
been
love.
entertaining, but at the same time informative
Yeah.
and truthful because
I love our
everything I've
Mondays
told you
together.
is the truth.
Do me a favor. Have a wonderful, wonderful remainder of your Monday evening. I pray for you often. You know I
Thank
love and
you.
respect you, and I can't wait to see you next the second Monday of next month. We'll do this again.
Yes, and I do want to know, like we talked about, a little bit more about what you do.
I will send you some messages, and then we'll do another little private Facebook Live thing between you and me, and we'll talk a little bit because I get a lot of people reaching out to me now, and if I can help somebody on their journey or put them on the right path, it's my pleasure.
That sounds good. I love you,
I'll see you
Shawn.
later. I love you too. I'll talk to you later.
Thank you all.
Bye bye, Dr. Joy.
Bye.
Okie dokie. Don't be scared, guys. Just be careful and be aware. I will be here. The next all new live show for me is Friday the 21st, and my guest is the one and only psychic medium June Lundgren. You're gonna love her. You all know her and love her anyway. And then I'll be back the next Monday. I'll be back. Will be the last Monday of the month, the 31st. Excuse me, with Susan Ahern, the Happy Medium. That'll be Happy Medium Monday on the 31st, and I'll see you guys on Friday the 21st. Um, Thank you to Zach and Adrian Clayton, my co-producers. Couldn't do the show without them. CommunityPayItForward.us. Go there, be surprised. USOCC.org, the church I belong to. Go there, be surprised. We have night prayer every night, Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Pacific. Bible study every Wednesday and Sunday afternoon at 5 p.m. Pacific. You can get the links to all of that either at the USOCC.org or at bishopjameslong.com if you want to be a part of either one of those. Thank you to Things Network. Thank you to Temple of Phoenix Rising Entertainment. Thank you to Skeleton Key Network. Thank you to PACT, little p, capital ACT, Podcasting for All Coming Together channel, for all of these other networks simulcasting my show. God bless you for that. And it's bad joke time. I'm going to pull a bad joke out that one of you sent in out of this haunted carnival barker hat. And it's my poor attempt to put a smile on everybody's face after Dr. Joy and I just freaked you all out. Guys, just get good with God. If you're good with God, no matter what happens, when it happens, you'll be up there looking down watching it happen. So you won't have to worry about it anymore, okay? What do sprinters eat before they race? Nothing. They fast. I love you all. I pray for you all often. God bless you all. Good night, Danny. Good night, Jack. Good night, Dog. Good night, Harold. Rest in peace. Good night, Ernie. Good night, Bill. Good night, Dan. See you when I see you. Peace.